Alright, so we got the 427 spoilers, and this chapter is super exciting because we're seeing Sukuna versus Yuji and Higuruma at the same time. No interruptions, triple threat match here, although it's more so a 2-on-1. But anyway, coming off of the previous chapter, we saw Sukuna going on a rampage here after coming out of the deadly sentencing domain expansion from Higuruma. And he was firing off some dismantles at Higuruma and Kusakabe, but turns out that Kusakabe was able to use his simple domain to defend both himself and Higuruma. And after Sukuna went more so on a rampage, just taking everybody out one by one, not killing them, but incapacitating them or just removing them from the picture. It eventually got to the point of him cornering Higuruma, who had the executioner's sword, which of course is capable of killing Sukuna with one single strike. And it came to the point of Sukuna firing off some dismantles against him, or maybe even cleaves, who knows, but I'm assuming it was dismantles. But it turns out that on the fly, Higuruma was able to develop domain amplification to shield himself from the dismantles, which prevented him from just getting, no diffed by Sukuna and allowed him to continue on against this fight, holding the executioner's sword. Still very much in the battle to take down Sukuna with a single strike. And this chapter begins with Sukuna assessing Higuruma. More than the sword, what caught Sukuna's eyes is suspension and resumption of the effects of curse technique. Sukuna praises Higuruma for being able to use curse technique at his level. So the way that this is worded here, I'm assuming this is just like a first draft of the translation of the pages here. And this is just what Miyamura has to work with, of course, but I guess we'll go more into this in my chapter review once the chapter gets released. So please subscribe if you haven't already. I know a lot of you guys watching this video come to my videos from your recommended. That's fine, but you could just, subscribe too. That way you can get the video as soon as it comes out, which is usually in the mornings, Central Time, American, but thank you. Sukuna acknowledges Higuruma. You are Higuruma Hiromi, right? And this is understandable that Sukuna knows who Higuruma is because, he was inside of Yuji during their initial fight at the beginning of the Culling Games. But there could even be a deeper, more nefarious reasoning to this, aside from the obvious. But it could be that Kenjaku somehow told Sukuna beforehand that, hey, there's going to be this Higuruma guy in the Culling game and he's going to have a sweet curse technique / domain expansion. It's more so with the former, I guess we can assume, because there wasn't any way for Kenjaku to really know this beforehand. I think it was kind of random with the curse technique that Higuruma was going to get, maybe. I mean, we don't really know all the details. But first, let's talk about the sponsor of this video, Private Internet Access. Private Internet Access is a virtual private network, or a VPN for short, which hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel. And believe it or not, Private Internet Access also provides a tool that can help anime fans. And I'll get more into that later, but Private Internet Access is also a tool that helps you with your everyday life. Because whenever you connect to the internet on a public Wi-Fi network, your data is at risk of being stolen. That's why Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection through their world-class server infrastructure, which makes your information shielded and bulletproof. Because earlier this year, there was a huge T-Mobile data breach where customers noticed that upon logging into their T-Mobile app, that they were seeing other customers' information being displayed instead of their own. This meant that their address, credit card information, and purchase history was exposed to the public. You can also now use one Private Internet Access subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices at the same time. But that's not all, because Private Internet Access also allows you to access region-restricted content from all over the world. Guys, we all love anime on this channel, and streaming services are notorious for region blocking certain anime. But you don't have to worry about that anymore, because Private Internet Access helps you overcome these restrictions by giving you the option to change your IP address to one of their 84 countries to choose from, as well as all 50 US states, allowing you to gain access to websites and services that are only available in those locations. The holiday season is also the best time for Private Internet Access, because if you simply just switch your IP to Japan and then go on Netflix, you've unlocked tons of content that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get, or you would have to go through like tons of other streaming services for. Like Demon Slayer, I didn't even get to watch the Swordsmith Village arc, and now I get to with private internet access with just one subscription to Netflix. So guys, you can get private internet access by clicking my link in the description, and by doing that, you're also going to get an 83% discount on private internet access. That's just $2.03 a month, and you'll also get 4 extra months completely free. Thanks, guys. And you guys, keep in mind, 2 months before all of this started, Higuruma was kind of just a normal lawyer, but I guess there is a reason why Kenjaku chose him. Yuji catches up to both of them, and the building they were in instantly gets destroyed. The slashes almost reach Higuruma. Yuji tries to punch, but Sukuna gets a hold of Yuji and sends a net of slashes on Yuji's chest. Sukuna disdainfully tells Yuji, "When will you ever understand? You are truly boring. There's nothing interesting about you." So that's a loaded statement there. Also in this sequence, it looks like Sukuna is firing off dismantles, I guess, because those are the flying slashes, right? Is that what was stated in the previous chapter? That dismantle is a flying slashing attack, right? Even though it doesn't really ultimately matter if you know the distinction between cleave and dismantle, because it ultimately just boils down to a slashing attack, and then Gege will tell you whether or not it is a quote-unquote slash that cuts the world. The reality cutter, or as I like to say, the atomic slash. But he hasn't really been using those lately. He's been more so using the standard slashes or dismantles. And they are cutting Yuji in the abdomen here, but this is battle manga. And if your head isn't coming off and you're like one of the main characters, you're probably going to survive something hitting you in the midsection. But it seems like Yuji's somehow just taking this on the chin. And as for Sukuna saying like, "You are truly boring, there's nothing interesting about you," it kind of reminds me of like the new Star Wars trilogy, because that's what Kylo Ren kind of told to Rey. I mean, I think verbatim he said that to her. What was it, in The Last Jedi maybe? And spoiler warning ahead in case you haven't seen Rise of Skywalker, but it actually turns out that Rey is not ordinary. She's actually the freaking granddaughter of Palpatine. Now, I'm not saying that Gege is lifting from that, but obviously there is more to Yuji than meets the eye. He's not boring, and there's nothing interesting about him. Obviously there is. I mean, Kenjaku didn't go out of his way to become a freaking woman and give birth to him. Just because he was boring and there was nothing interesting about him. I mean, it was more than him just being a vessel for Sukuna. There's a reason why Yuji was able to control him the way that he did, and the reason why Yuji is so powerful and everything. Also, Kenjaku mentioned that Yuji was like part of the Eye of the Storm, the way that Sukuna is as well. So I think this is just a misdirection from Gege here. Yuji is very important, but we just still don't know his true significance yet, which I'm fine with. I don't even really want to go too in-depth into Yuji. I don't even think that Gege has given us enough info to go that deep into Yuji at this point. We can go way more into Sukuna since he is based off of a existing mythological figure. But Yuji, not so much, and that's fine. I like it like that. But just keep in mind that there is going to be like a somewhat of a chosen one moment, if you will, with Yuji, if that makes sense. Not like he's the reincarnation of Joy Boy or something like that, or Indra or Ashura or whatever. It's gonna be something kind of related in some way, but Yuji will be, somewhat of a big piece on this proverbial chessboard of Jujutsu Kaisen. I mean, he kind of has to be. He's the freaking MC. Unless Sukuna is actually the MC this whole time, which I'm actually on board with. If that is the case, that would be pretty cool. Sukuna casually dodges Higuruma's sword and even manages to punch him in the face. So yeah, Higuruma swinging around the executioner's sword like we established. Only one slice is enough to kill Sukuna, which is incredible. But Sukuna's just like, nah, he's dipping him like Muhammad Ali or Anderson Silva in his prime. And it's like, Sukuna's having fun with this. Like, he's enjoying the moment here. None of these guys here, or no one else really left in the series, is on the level of Gojo, which, obviously was the sorcerer who was able to push Sukuna the furthest. So So if there's no one else like Gojo, then Sukuna is just playing with kids at this point. But he's still having fun because, you know, his life is on the line, but it's kind of not at the same time because he's at such a higher level than everyone. But anyway, Sukuna begins the chants and sends a powerful dismantle on Higuruma and proceeds to tell him to heal himself. Higuruma's right arm is cut off, and Sukuna once again tells him to get healed. Sukuna cuts off Higuruma's remaining arm and asks him if this is all he's got. Sukuna warns Higuruma that he will cut off his head next, so he should use reverse curse technique. After saying that Higuruma will die if he doesn't use reverse curse technique, Sukuna goes, "Gambare, gambare." So, gambare is like, do your best, or good luck, or something like that. The way I see it is kind of like, in this context, I guess, like, show me what you got, come on. And I guess that goes into why it's so difficult to, like, localize translations of Japanese. And why, like, it goes off of, like, various different individuals and how they want to interpret it. And that's how a lot of misinformation gets passed around, but it is what it is. But going back to what I was saying about Sukuna, like, having fun here and trying to make the most of what he has with these fights, he is trying to bring the best out of Higuruma. Like, he's trying to force him to evolve on the fly. The way that Sukuna put himself into a vulnerable situation against Gojo, like Sukuna forced himself to evolve against Gojo using the 10 shadows to figure out how to overcome the infinity curse technique, which obviously he did using Maharaga, and then using the data that Maharaga collected, he was able to alter his cleave to become the slash that cuts the world, or the atomic slash. So Sukuna is still having fun here, trying to force Higuruma to evolve on the fly, just as Sukuna has in the Culling game. So if he can just push him to figuring out reverse curse technique, then he can push him further into this fight, which will then push Sukuna further. Because I guess that's the purpose of the Culling games as well, to force sorcerers to evolve. More so just Sukuna. I mean, that's the whole incentive of why Sukuna agreed to all of this, or at least I assume so. As Higuruma tells himself that he should die after fulfilling his role, Sukuna gets attacked by piercing blood. So this sequence is a little confusing because I'm not entirely sure who is doing this, or at least from what I see, I can't see who is doing it. Maybe it's Choso, because Choso did get stabbed through the abdomen in the previous chapter by Sukuna with like 2 arms. And we didn't see him die, of course, but he was like implied to be incapacitated. But maybe he's firing off this from a distance, or it's Yuji using piercing blood. Again, I can't see the full chapter here, so it is very possible that it is Yuji performing the piercing blood here, because it's also implied that whatever kind of power up that Yuji got, or transformation that he's going through right now, could possibly come from the other death womb paintings, the little fetus in a jar things that didn't fully become cursed humans, the way that Choso, Kechizu, and whatever the other one name is. You know what I'm talking about? The 3 brothers, or the 3 step brothers of Yuji. There was like 6 other paintings that just remained as womb jar things, and Choso was able to recover them from the Jujutsu warehouse in Tengen's place. And we just assumed that, you know, through that 1 year time jump, Yuji like consumed them and got a power up, maybe? As Sukuna was analyzing that technique, which belongs to the big brother of the death paintings, Higuruma managed to learn reverse curse technique in that instance and regenerates his right arm and attacks Sukuna. Higuruma's executioner sword pierces Sukuna's arm, but Sukuna had already cut his wrist before Higuruma pierced it with the sword. Sukuna tells Higuruma, "You're okay at best," to Higuruma and grabs a hold of him. We then see Higuruma wincing in pain as Sukuna's slashes start to appear at his face. So yeah, I think we talked about this in the previous chapter, that considering that Higuruma was able to learn domain amplification on the fly, of course he was going to learn reverse curse technique as well, because he needed to, if he was going to survive this fight for another 2 chapters. And what do you know, the freaking genius that Higuruma is, he just figured it out on the fly. I mean, this is incredible. This is like, if you're familiar with code, or if you just know of code, this is like on the fly, with no prior experience, You figuring out how to write incredible lines of code that can create like an app similar to like DoorDash or something like that. Like that's what Higuruma is essentially doing here, which is, yeah, unheard of. But I guess if you're some kind of Mozart type code genius, you could do it in theory, maybe. Just as Higuruma gets completely slashed, he throws his sword, which Yuji grabs a hold of by arriving behind Sukuna. Yuji watches as Higuruma begins to fall and remembers Nanami's final moments when he said, "I'll leave the rest to you." Grabbing a hold of the executioner's sword, Yuji proceeds to stab Sukuna as he tells him himself his role, that I am a jujutsu sorcerer. Editor's comment: the curse entrusted to him is now in Yuji's hands. So that's the end of the chapter. Higuruma getting cut here by some quote-unquote slashes. I don't think it's the slashes that cut the world, of course, because he would be gone, but he is bleeding quite a bit, and these slashes did go completely through him. Now, I don't think Higuruma is dying here because he did learn reverse curse technique. He was able to regenerate his friggin' arm, like from nothing, like regrow tissue, like, you know, the way that we've seen the other highest reverse curse technique users perform. So this shouldn't really be too difficult for him to recover from, unless this is the end for him and his dying moment is passing on the executioner's sword to Yuji, who now has it. And in the final panel, he's about to stab Sukuna in the back with the executioner's sword, but from what I see, it's not making contact, which makes me think that coming into the next chapter, Sukuna is probably going to be able to avoid this. And yeah, because it would just be too easy if he just killed him now, especially with the executioner's sword. It would just be too easy and kind of anticlimactic. So I assume that Sukuna is going to avoid this somehow. Or if he is stabbed in the back, maybe he's just going to cut his entire back off the way that he cut his arm. Not really sure, but I would really be surprised if Sukuna dies here. It would just be unnecessary, you know? But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments, and I'll go more into this into my chapter review. If you liked it, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.